Hello, everyone. I'm Alena with Celebrate Every Step. I have my master's in social work. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, psychic medium, and spiritual guide. And I am so excited to be here today and talk more sacredness, intention, and peace in your life with Joan of Joan Hearts Connect and Joan's Art Connect. And we are going to be talking today about her background and also what she will be offering at our expo in Punxsutawney in June 2023. It'll be on the 24th, which is our shift into summer. And I am so happy to have her. I met Joan a couple years ago at this point. It seems like yesterday and yet a lifetime all at once that I've known you. Definitely a soul connection. And she did a beautiful reading for me and then asked me to bring my daughter in so that we could talk about one of our pets that had died. And it was a little bit traumatic for the kids because it was so sudden. And he died before they had a chance to say their official goodbyes. And I felt like I was doing the right thing because he was suffering so bad that I took him to the vet and that was it. But then in my kid's mind, I let him go without giving them that opportunity. And I didn't realize how traumatic that had been for them. And you picked right up on that right away. And that was before I had even met you personally. And so it was just one of those amazing experiences that you get when you go to shows like that, where you just come across somebody that has such beautiful, nurturing, compassionate energy. And that is absolutely Joan. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I mean, my memory of meeting you, the most awesome part, I think, about you and this event that's coming up is you're open to so many things. And so when you are open to so many different ways to heal or share or grow, it brings so much more to the table. So, yeah. That was the interesting thing about doing those readings for you years ago is that, you were open-minded for so much, and spirit usually just shows up in ways that we can't imagine when we don't put a limit on it and we don't have an expectation, which is absolutely amazing. But, that's the whole thing about love. You don't put an expectation or a limit, and it grows bigger than you think it will.
Yeah. Oh, I just got full body chills when you said that about no expectations on love. That has been such a theme, probably the last couple years of my favorite saying is expectations ruin the day again, because when we come into anything with expectations, we are bound to be disappointed. And that doesn't mean that we don't have goals. It doesn't mean that we aren't wanting things to be a certain way, manifesting all of those things, but we set that intention and then we let go of the expectations. And I've even started adding in this or something even better. And so trusting that process, that what unfolds, what happens is, this or something better. And I love that.
And that's, I think, the most important key word that you said is trust. Anyone who does work in this field, it's a hard job. It's like you can do certain things to prepare knowledge and try to learn techniques or practice and become more fluid, but it's trust. I mean, that's all it is you show up and trust and in hopes that, you'll do the job that you're really praying that you can do to show up for others. And I know I usually take it very seriously like that. I start 24 hours before and I really set intent about, 30 minutes before an event or a private reading and really try to amp up my energy and make sure that I'm very aware and listening and rested. And I think, when you commit yourself to this kind of work, you are putting yourself in a position to be very vulnerable. And it's the same as the person who's sitting on the other side of the seat, the clientele that sits down, they're very vulnerable and it's a hard thing to approach, whether it's a loved one, a family member, or a pet that is a family member. To a lot of people, pets are a family member. So, you have to be able to let down your guard and expectation of what's going to happen so that, your needs can be met. But the other thing is too, I think I found that, to be open that way and to be able to express, the passion that they have for you is such a beautiful thing. And it's a pleasure and it's an honor to sit and do this kind of work for others and be that open for people to get those messages.
Yeah.
It really boils down to communication. And I always say this, and I don't know if I said this last year to you. I think as we go through this process of doing this year after year, like, I'm continually learning, and I would be very upset if I wasn't learning. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's what life is about. You're supposed to be continually learning. But I've learned too that, like, as I do this work, it's such an experimental thing that, like, I'm always improving and always learning new ways to communicate. And it's just like meeting anybody at a party. It's not always fluid at first, but once you kind of understand how they communicate, it can be very, very fluid and very beautiful.
Yeah.
It's not a quick match right away, but it works out.
Yeah, and I like that distinction of, you're talking about being prepared, bringing in sacredness and intention every single day, also more intensely leading up to events and readings. But then also on the other side, you're also always preparing yourself for being greater, doing better. And that's absolutely my thought process in that too. And I'm always listening to something, learning something, but then more importantly, actually integrating that into my life and into my personal practices, because I see a lot in the therapy world, and then in this more clinic, the hypnotherapy and coaching world, where people can be always learning, but, or, like this book and that book and this person and that person and this YouTube and that YouTube. But what actually resonates and what actually gets incorporated into your day-to-day life. And that's the really big missing piece that I see a lot. Or they can be doing all of the things, but it's just like a checklist. Like, oh, I did my yoga. Oh, I did my meditation. Oh, I, had my cup of tea. Oh, I had my healthy breakfast. Oh, I went for my walk. But like, are you actually breathing and settling into that and feeling how good that yoga feels, feeling how good that meditation feels, feeling how good that healthy breakfast feels within your heart, within your being? And that's what I absolutely love about you, because every time I'm around you, I feel better. I feel happier. I feel lighter. I feel that love that you just emanate. And it's just such a beautiful presence that you bring to, my personal life, but also every show that I've ever been at. I can just feel the waves of love coming from your table. And, I forgot to mention in the beginning, you connect with loved ones that have passed, ancestors that are further back. You connect with our pets. Also just kind of like the animal guides or spirit animals, and also angels. So you have a very dynamic reading, and one or all of them can come through in a reading with you. But ultimately, love is your primary language and all of that. And it's just a beautiful thing to witness and experience.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I mean, I attempt to do that. Usually when I arrive at an event, I usually do my Reiki symbols and I walk the perimeter, or I walk around and I kind of set my intent. The wonderful thing about events like this that you host, most of the people that are in my circle, which I'm very confident and comfortable around, is that our intent matches. And it's not just, I mean, I'm going to scoot back just a little bit to what you said. Like, I love to learn. And I think I've found a tribe of women who I work with at these events who love to learn. And it's not about loving to learn to get ahead. It's loving to learn to be better in themselves. And when you work on yourself that much and you're trying to distinguish what are your faults and what are your, pluses, you tend to like push out in different ways. And I think the beautiful thing too, and a lot of people who come to these events, they want to learn, or they have abilities in certain ways and they want encouragement, and they're scared to say that they've had maybe a life death experience, or, they don't have a comfortable setting to have language with other people in order to express what experiences they've had. They second guess themselves. And I think a lot of things, validation's hard for women and men. I mean, not a lot of people sit and validate each other. And the great thing is spirit always shows up and they validate. And that's the most beautiful part of it. But if you get back to the learning part, it's like, I guess the message I would really want people to know when they come to these events, it's like, it should be about maybe finding answers or making connections, but also it should be about learning how to become, a better human. And I always refer to, when I do these experiences or readings for other people, I always say there's the human side and there's the spiritual side. And people define their spiritual side differently than, others. Mm-hmm. But the human side, we still are imperfect and we still have all these things that we have to go through and experience. And sometimes I'm not the nicest person. And, that's where my spiritual side kicks in. And we're like, okay, well, how do we become better? Because that's not who I want to become. And I want to be able to move further along. And I think there are a lot of people in that situation. It's not about the woo-woo, as they say it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's about coming together to make it better or to move forward in some way. And the gentleness that you have to have with others, you have to have with yourself in that experience of not setting expectation. But anybody who knows me will say, like, you're so hard on yourself, Joan, you're so hard on yourself. And yet anybody who does health work or this kind of healing work or, any kind of spiritual work or that kind of Reiki or whatever, we are hard on ourselves because we want to show up and be the best that we can be. So,
yes. Yeah. And that's what I was just going to say too. And, that human side of all of us, that's the shadow part of us. That's the inner child wounds that we have, and we all have it. So even if we had a good childhood, there are still things that stick with us. And I see that all the time when somebody comes for abandonment or for anxiety. When we go back and look at what is in their subconscious, what their soul has held on to, it's not always what you would consciously identify as something traumatic. But at that point in their development, in that moment in their life, the thing that somebody said, and it could have just been in passing, it didn't even have to have negative intent, but it stuck in their soul and in their subconscious in a way that really hurt and harmed them and harmed the belief that they have about themselves. And so, I love that you are self-aware of that and that you're working to move through that, because as we heal ourselves, the people around us can also heal too. And so, I'm always looking for those shadows and those wounds that need healed. And obviously I'm not perfect at that because I'm also just human too, trying to figure things out as I go along. And I think that's the biggest thing. I was going to say, you are very hard on yourself. And, while that is a good thing because we are always striving to do better and be better, I think there's a way to do better and be better with gentleness and ease and grace and compassion. And I can extend that to other people all day long, but, or, at least to my clients, but, for myself, that's been a lifelong struggle. So I totally get that.
I always find, or what I try to do when people come for a reading is I try to not only make the connections and show up and be able to try to get closer to spirit so they get the messages that we're there for health and healing. But I also try to ask spirit to help teach, and not just teach the person I'm reading, but myself as well. A lot of times they'll give information and I'll be like, shiz, I don't do that. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I have to take, their advice as well to kind of move on. I've been very lucky with the experiences that I've had and the ability to be able to take courses and learn and search as much as I have. The more I seem to try to investigate or learn, the more I develop in different ways that I didn't see coming. I did take a course in, angel communication a long time ago. And I found a lady who did animal communication. I studied with her from California and she was phenomenal. We did a lot of work with missing and wild animals, wilderness animals. live animals and pets that have passed, a lot of problem solving. So a lot of the work that I did as far as animal readings were problem solving issues where they introduced other pets, or the pet was going to transition, or there was health issues and they couldn't speak for themselves. So I've done a lot of that, not only for just dogs or cats, but horses and ferrets, and you kind of name it. That's the exciting part for me, who is the major animal lover and has more pets than I should in a household. Yeah. But the fun thing is too, like the last thing I did train for was a Holy Fire 3 Karuna Reiki, and that it seemed to really amp up any kind of medical intuitive kind of things. So I have had a real sense of issues in the physical body, and now I can kind of like scan from the top down and know where there's issues at for other people or past, and that's been intriguing. So I've been really kind of reading and searching a lot and learning about that now, just to have more information to understand what happens. And for people who do this work, I would consider myself an empath. They do instill feelings on me. You have all of your clairs. So just like your regular senses of touch, sight, hearing, taste, all of that, smell, you have the same thing in your clairs, where it's a subtle, and I always kind of explain it, it's almost like a thin layer of an onion. It's like you kind of have to peel back a thin layer to kind of get the nuance of what comes next. And that's what it is. It's about trusting those like subtleties that come forward, and then going with it and saying it or expressing it or identifying it and putting language to it, so that they're actually, using you to speak for them and understanding what they're trying to say. Get information in a lot of different ways. I'm constantly like looking at other things about divination. Like I love sounds kind of odd. I love Ouija boards. I love table tipping. I love, walls. I love all that stuff. I've taken courses in tarot, read oracle. I'm more of an intuitive reader. I feel it out. So a lot of times the things I speak is I feel, they make me feel, that kind of language. And it's funny because, when you meet people who feel a lot, who have high emotion or low emotion or whatever it is, you can tend to be pegged in a little space of, you shouldn't feel so much. And that's a good thing for our world, coming forward. I do think it's an age of women leaders, but I also think it's an age of being in touch with how you feel. I see the younger generations coming forward, and they're very in tune with how they feel world, and standing in the world, and living in the world, and breathing in the world. A lot more thrift shopping and using things in their life. And I think that's a beautiful thing coming forward. And us as healers that come together in these kind of events, it's kind of the same thing. You have a lot of artists and people who feel their way through the world and express by feeling through the world. And I think sometimes that's a scary thing for the scientific mind. It's a you want to call bluff on it. And, a lot of us have, training that is very scientific or very methodical. Yes. And we're all skeptics ourselves. It's not like you don't go through thinking like, ooh, like you question. Yes. And yet at the same time, the great thing is we do have those methodical moments where you go back and you're like, well, the human in me, the grounded person who was trained in, a bachelor's and a master's and do all this work, my skeptic mind goes here. But then, spirit shows up in a totally different way that you can't put to words. And what some people like, and this is kind of, I just said this to my husband the other day, I always record my sessions and send them to people. And some people are like, I can't believe you do that. But I'm the type of person where I would forget what was said. And I want to be present. So I do it for others because I want to be present. But at the same time, sometimes I sit and I think about it and I'm like, well, anybody could listen to those recordings and say, well, she's asking a lot of questions or this or that. Take it all apart. But it's one of those things too, where it's your truth when you have had a reading to know if you feel their presence there. Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, there's tons of readers out there, and there's tons of different type of people, and everybody has different needs. And so, I'm not everybody's fix. You're not, but sometimes we are. And we're lucky that we have this strong connect that they're drawn to come to sit with us.
Yeah.
But the most amazing part is, when they do, and you're having that reading and you can bear witness, myself or the client can bear witness to the fact that that loved one is there.
Yeah.
Nobody else can prove that for you. Nobody else can deny that for you. And I had those moments of like, you literally, your jaw dropped, and then you're like, I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. I mean, there's no physical way. I mean,
No.
and most of us have full-time jobs, and we don't have time to make up. We don't have time to search.
I know. I love when people always do the caveat of like, I didn't even give them my last name, and I didn't even, and I'm like, even if you get, like, I get their last names, I get whatever. I don't have time to like Google you or look you up or whatever. Like that's just such a funny caveat that people feel like they have to put in. And that's exactly it. It is feeling into it. And I get a lot of people that second guess or question, like when we're in session, they are looking at that and we are, fully in that experience. There might be tears, there might be anger, there might be so many emotions, but then the second they step outside my door, or not the second, but when they step back out in the real world, all that comes in and, becomes a question, and, you start to second guess and, all of those things. And I try to remind people of that. Like, it's okay to believe what you felt and what you experienced. And it's okay to live in a little more magic and a little more of the feeling. And it's so true. I see kind of two kinds of people a lot, where they're big feelers and that has continued and they don't really know what to do with all of those big feelings, or they started out as big feelers and they've pushed it down for so many years that it's either they're good at intellectualizing it, or it's coming out as physical pain or chronic issues or things like that. And, so those chronic issues can be chronic pain, physical issues, but it can also be mental and emotional issues like depression, anxiety. And, yes, of course, there are chemical things that are happening within us, but it's all interconnected. So, our brain chemistry is impacted by the food we eat and the drinks that we drink. And it's impacted by whether we slow down, whether we're sleeping well. And, so that's what I like about your sessions too. Like mine, we're talking about the spirit and the mystical and the metaphysical, but we're also talking about the practical. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you doing the things that feel really good for you? And I love that, of bringing in that, so kind of moving into that skepticism piece. Like, yeah, I have a science background, bio pre-med undergrad, master's in social work. It's very methodical. You're learning theories, you're learning equations, you're learning the scientific method and model and testing hypotheses. And so, my brain works in that way. And I think that has served me well in this metaphysical world, because it has taught me to question everything and everybody that I come across. And that's not in like a adversarial way. I'm not like, you have to prove yourself, but it is a like, I'm gonna like feel into this situation and feel into this person and make sure that it feels good for me and what I need in this moment. And that's something that I encourage people to do is, walk around the room, see who stands out to you, and then go talk to them, have a conversation, see how it feels. And if you want to stop by and do an actual session with them, and always take it with a grain of salt, because on both sides, we're human. So, what we experience, what we take in, how we interpret messages is going to vary person to person. So, it is not an exact science, and there's really not even such a thing as exact science anyways, because science is all about testing and shifting and changing as our our knowledge and our perspectives shift and change too. So yeah, I love that you pointed that out of coming into it with methodical plans, but then also just being open to whatever it is that comes up for you too. So,
well, I think that's the beautiful thing that I appreciate about you too. There's, when you go to events, especially yours, there's like a code of ethic and moral. And as much as you think, these are kind of woo-woo events or people will label them a certain way, I love when people ask me questions. You should waste my time and ask questions because it's a service, and like you should fully understand and be comfortable. You would ask a doctor, you would ask anybody else who was doing the job, you would ask a teacher, you would ask, your mechanic, whatever it was, you would be asking questions. It's a little off the wall for me to think that I would just sit down and not ask anybody questions. Concerned or want to have answers, but I do feel like I'm very blessed to know you. I'm very lucky that I have a circle of people that I really, really trust, but it's also our ethics and morals kind of match up about what we want to leave and what our imprint is in the world of doing this kind of work. And I, it's funny because I've taken and I've learned for so long, but like I've been in classes where people are like, oh, you can't drink caffeine, you can't drink alcohol, you can't do certain things, you shouldn't eat meat, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But I think the beauty with anybody who does this work and who wants to learn and who come to these events, it's finding you, and you are supposed to be uniquely made like everybody else is uniquely made. And there's a space and place for each of us. And our experiences are going to be similar, but also very different. So, in order to keep like investigating that and finding some answers, I tend to tell people, if somebody passes, I'd rather them wait 6 to 8 months because there's grief process that you have to go through. And a lot of times you don't hear things clearly when you're in that grieving process, but also on the other side, I've found that it becomes a little stagnant. They can't show the feeling as deep as they can if they've been there a little bit longer. Not to say I haven't felt people immediately sitting at a funeral and they're talking, but it's usually kind of baseline or flat. And yet at the same time, it depends on what you're going there for. If you are using it as a crutch and you're going to a lot of events to, wobble your way through life, then you're doing it the wrong way. And I'll be open to say that you're doing it the wrong way, because you should have control of your life. You have the choices to make in your life and make things happen. I've found that the readings that I do, that they really coach to say, these are your choices, but these are the easiest ways to get through it. And we're here to help you. You just have to trust us and ask. Which kind of leads me to ask you too, do you ever play the games of like when you're trying to get a parking place or do things and you're like, okay, spirit, help me out. I'm in a pinch and I need to get here. Or you open yourself up to say, okay, I have this extra, thing of deodorant or whatever it may be. Who am I supposed to give it to? Who can I give it forward to? And then within like 2 weeks, or even sometimes it's 2 hours, it's like it happens, or 10 minutes, like you're asking for a parking place and bam, right in front of the store, in and out, you're done and you're on your way. Setting that intent in that ethical statement of like, I'm going to show up for you. Can you show up for me? And they always do. And I always say it's a game, but at the same time, it's love. I mean, love is playful. So, when you're asking those questions and you're saying, these are the things I'm really concerned about. And maybe I don't want the answer, but I want to know what the options are. And I want to know what you're seeing, you know what I mean? And be open to it. It becomes a fun thing to experience, but also something you can work at as far as the client who sits down, for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love doing that too of, all right, I'm heading to this place today and I need a spot like right up front, or and I'm trying to think of what else I've just done that. Oh, I'll do that with like, if I get a stone or, different card decks, or, I'm looking up, all my decks are up above me. These dogs are barking like crazy in the background. I will notice that sometimes I'm not getting it for myself, and so then I'm like, okay, so then now you need to show me who this is for. And that is a fun thing to be able to pass things on to people and be able to offer that. I just had that happen it's probably been a couple months ago, but I was at a thrift store and felt really called to get some Mother Mary medals. and I was like, oh, okay. Like in my mind, I was justifying that, oh, I'm going to do these wind prayers. Is and I are working on some new crafts this year for expos. And one of them are wind prayers. And so you put special beads on a string and hang it in a place. And so the idea is that every time the wind blows, it's like you sending your love to your people that have crossed over. And I wrote up a beautiful prayer to say, when you hang it and when you think of it. But I think it was the very next day, I had a new client that came to me that was in like existential, like I'm seeing visions and I don't know what is happening and like freaking out. Guess who it was that was coming to him? Mother Mary.
I love that. I love that.
And he was like, because it had been a couple of days of this before his girlfriend was like, hey, like we should probably go talk to somebody, either like a psychiatrist or like there's this other lady in town, like maybe we should go talk to her first. And when he started talking, I was like, holy crap.
On them early.
Yeah, like sometimes I feel those nudges, but I don't always know why. But I've learned to trust that anyways. And then for it to be shown to me like almost immediately as to why I had that nudge the day prior. And so he said in those days, he had this feeling of like, I need to get a Mother Mary necklace or, medallion. And then he was listening already to his nudges and being like, oh, but somebody's going to give it to me. And I was like, well, here I am. I showed up. So
that happens.
Yeah. And that's those just really cool synchronicities that when you get in that flow, when you have that connection, when you have the practices, you can hear that, because you were talking about it being very subtle. And it is like,
yes,
we're just in the thrift store. I'm with my kids and, but like, it was that just subtle nudge of like, oh, like I love vintage jewelry. So I went back to look at that. And that's where those medals were, so it was just like one step after another where I just kind of am in that flow and listening and following and then actually acting on it when I feel called to. And it was subtle. It wasn't like get the Mother Mary, medallions. It's just a gentle feeling. So
the things that you can't like shake off. You might think about it 4 or 5 times and you're like, well, I don't think I have to buy that. It doesn't even make any sense. We'll need it. There's what will I ever do with it? Like, I don't, And it's the trust. It's the jumping off the cliff to the certain extent to say that and do that. And it shows up in a great way. What I was going to ask you too, and like when you work these events, do you ever notice that there's themes? Because I've noticed that. I've noticed that like the people who sit down, some of the times there are a lot of nurses who come, or, there's certain kind of themes, or like, they might have had 3 siblings. Like I'm come from a family with, 3 girls in it. And like, I'll have a day where like everybody's one of 3. And I'm like, what? But it's kind of interesting too. And I sometimes think that would be a really cool podcast to do, is to like talk to people who are intuitive and talk about the themes or things that lessons they've learned that come out of it. Because I've been so incredibly lucky that sometimes before an event, like I can feel them lining up. I can feel spirit lining up. Now, that's not to say that I'll connect with all of them, but at the same time, like I can feel them waiting. I know the intent has been set that people are going to be coming and they're going to be sitting with me. And yet at the same time, then I go through my day and I feel like every day, I mean, if I do work an event like this, it's a fair and you have maybe 15 people that you get to read, if it's, or more or less. And you end up having these moments of like, you give these readings and there's little nuggets of your own blessing in it where you are like, oh my gosh, like I had an Aunt Esther too, or I had, there's things where they give me the little nuggets or gifts, and there's similarities that are so beyond the norm of having, this synchronicity of it, that like, I know that it was also a reading for me. It was a comfort for me in some way, shape, or form. And I often think like, gosh, why aren't you keeping this? Like, why aren't you writing it all down? Because they're so memorable in the end that it's life-changing, to actually have those experiences. Do you find that too?
Absolutely. And I even see it even more because I see clients every day. So for sure at events, but then I will see it, where they're dealing with the same struggles or the same issues or the same kinds of things are coming up for them. And so sometimes I'll even look at, the astrological or what's happening, either season change or moons or planet shifts or things like that. And I don't understand a lot of that. I have a very basic knowledge. I have a book that I use a lot for that, the Daily Planetary Guide, because I just don't know that stuff,
Right.
and it doesn't stick in my brain. So I will look at that. But yeah, like recently it's been coming up for people of, so it's been happening for a couple years, but this is like the real pivot point where people are completely letting go of everything that no longer serves them.
Yes.
And really stepping into who they want to be.
Yes.
And so like that stuff has been falling away since 2019 because I saw it starting then. But now like 2023 is where we get to finally fully embody the life we want to be living. And so it's been interesting because obviously we're a couple months into 2023 already, just those up levels and those bigger shifts. And, it's amazing to watch for those themes. And I love it because I'll often see it in my life too. It's like, oh, this is coming up for me. And it's giving me validation of like, oh, this is real and true. This is something you need to work on. This is something you need to pay attention to. And what tools do you want to use? What tools do you want to pull into your day to day? Like, because this was coming up for clients where they were sitting in front of me and saying, I know what I need to do, but I just can't seem to do it. And I was hearing it every single session. And it's not me saying it. It's them coming in and saying, some line of that. And then I'm looking at myself and I was like, oh yeah, like my food has been off track. I've been drinking too much. I was going to work out, but I wasn't doing my daily yoga. And it was like, yeah, whatever was happening, I know what I need to do, but I wasn't implementing it. And so that's that gift where my clients are showing up and saying the same thing that I'm struggling with. And so it's that back and forth where I'm helping them get in touch with what they actually need in their day to day. But then it's also allowing me to say like, okay, yeah, that's what you need in your day to day too. So very awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. I think sometimes with events like this, people get scared. They think, oh, I'm going to go. And then last minute, they kind of pull out and they don't come, or vice versa. They think, I had heard about it. I wasn't going to go. And then all of a sudden my friend caught me by the ear and told me I had to get in the car and come. Yeah. And it's like, that kind of stuff happens all the time too, where, they will do whatever they can do to get you there in order to get the message that you need to have, which is amazing. Small miracles in little ways make big differences. So
yeah, I love that. Small miracles in little ways. Oh, I like that. Yeah. And that is a good thing or a good point where there is some fear around this kind of work. There is some fear around going and sitting with somebody. And like you said, being vulnerable. But every person.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I remember my first experiences. Like I thought I was going mad. I mean, I was afraid to tell my husband. I thought I was, like you go through all these things and you're like, I have to be losing my mind. And then you start verbalizing it just because you don't want to lose your mind, and that kind of leads me to another thing. It's like, you have to kind of communicate and talk about your experiences and talk about your interest in this stuff. And you have to like keep the people that you love on the same page, because if you don't, at some point, you're going to be so much further ahead than others that you won't be able to pull them up. And I had a teacher who said that to me once, and I was like, I don't know. And then, it wasn't long with like 1 or 2 years later. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. You are absolutely right. Because it's a language barrier that if you can't express who you are and what you're doing, the gap just gets wider and wider. You notice that when you do this work and you attend these kind of events, your tribe tends to change. You love and hold close to you they change. I think, when you're on that forced projection of like growth, that can be a bumpy ride for people. So.
Yeah, for sure. I do hear that a lot too, of, relationships falling away. But really, sometimes it is a good thing too, where people get more intentional about where they want to place their energy and attention. And so those relationships that are toxic or aren't supporting them for their highest good, do fall away. And obviously that's a good thing. But yes, I totally agree with at least communicating what you're feeling and what you're experiencing, so you can either get the love and support, or you can realize like, oh, I need to go somewhere else for that. And, just keep that search up. And it's always funny to me when people are like, they'll sit down, they'll be like, I know this is going to sound really weird. And I'm like, no. You don't understand my life. Nothing you can say is going to sound weird to me. So please just, pour your heart out, and I'm going to protect your privacy, and I'm going to protect your heart as you are telling me what you're experiencing. And
so market signs that say, instead of weird, say amazing. It's amazing.
Yes.
It's an amazing story. So.
Yeah. And I have a friend that always is like, I don't want to be the weirdest one in the room. And and I'm like, I love that sentiment, because I don't think weird is bad. I love, weird. And like you said, words are just words, and taking that power back of, weird and woo woo and, all of these things that people can be called along the way, even crazy. I'm like, just take it back. Sure. If you want to say like, this is crazy, I feel crazy, like, that's okay. Crazy isn't bad. We just need to make sure that you're feeling okay, that you're doing okay in the midst of the craziness, in the midst of the weirdness. And so I love that so much.
Probably so off track. What that? It's probably have you so off track right now, but
no, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I just go with the flow on all of these. Obviously we have the things that we're going to talk about, but I love seeing where it goes. That's kind of the beauty of this, and trusting, my intuition and my guidance. And obviously you trust your intuition and guidance. So I always set the intention of, help me to say, do, and be everything that Joan needs, and that every person who watches this needs. So I always trust that we'll go exactly where we need to. So I do want to have you talk about the sessions you'll be offering at the expo, and we'll wrap up from there. So you are doing 20-minute sessions?
Yes. So it's 20-minute sessions for $40, and they are recorded. You can be open to specific things, or you can be open to anything. Usually I like to know your intent, if you're open to whatever, or if you have specific things. Usually if somebody's very specific and it's a limited timed reading, then I usually say, well, like, ask for specific questions, because I don't want to waste your time. I want to get through it and make sure that they're answering what you want. I do readings that are both, I would say, the UK way and the United States way. I get very evidential, which is the UK way, and I get very informational. Story type telling is, kind of the American way to do it. So I get a little bit of both, but setting the intent to say what they need in that short amount of time is very helpful. So yeah, I'm open to, whoever wants to sit with me and have those kind of readings.
You can pre-book. Psychic, medium, animal communication, angel communication, and they can even do Reiki with you too, which I need to get Reiki from you. I have yet to get Reiki from you. So I definitely need to do that.
Well, I usually get messages when I get Reiki too. So it's kind of open to everything when Reiki comes through. So.
Okay. Awesome. And so I'll have your information where they can pre-book for the expo. You don't have to do that. That is just something that we offer, so that, when people come in, they know like, oh, I'm going to come in at this particular time, since it's spread out over an entire day. Although last year we had people that were there for the entire 7 hours or whatever it was last year. I think we're at 6 hours this year, where they just, signed up for different things. They went and shopped in between. They would go have lunch. They'd come back. So that was really, really cool to see people kind of coming in and out over the day, and just kind of immersing themselves for the full day in readings and healing and shopping and, supporting local artists and all of that kind of stuff. So,
well, the amazing thing too is, if you've never been to an event like this, like, the energy is amazing. I mean, it's really palpable. You walk in and you can feel the love and the energy that's there.
It's like that. I'm at home.
And it's like-minded people in the same place trying to do the same thing, and just exclude love, or exude love. Sorry,
we're not excluding love. We're exuding love.
Excluding hate, but
Yeah, we'll put like, exclude and then a thing through it and exude love. And yeah, and you were talking about, you walk around and set your intention. And as I'm creating an event, as I create a class, as I create a course, I'm always setting my intention going into that. And this event is no different. I've already, been doing that with every post, with every interview, with every message that I sent out to the vendors, because I want to have the exact right vendors there, and then also the exact right people coming to the show itself. So, on all levels, I'm setting the intention of what we want to have there. So it's amazing.
Well, and I think too, I mean, hopefully we'll have a lot of return people, because I was blessed to come last year. But those who are maybe new know that when people come to this event, you've handpicked some people who are readers who will treat you like family, and it's safe. So that's, I think, the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I always love spending time with you and talking with you. And I can't wait for the people who saw you last time or at other events to come see you again. And for those brand new people, new love and new energy to come into the event this year. Do you have anything else you would like to say?
No, just thank you so much. And I can't wait to connect for people there on that day. So
absolutely. Bye, everybody. And if you have any questions for me, if you have any questions for Joan, feel free to message us or to reach out in any way that works for you. And we are happy to respond. Take care, everyone.
Bye.